Welcome folks to this tutorial where we are going to look at biology paper 2 for the year 2015. So question 1 reads, figure 1.1 and figure 1.2 show the structure of specialized cells in plants. So we have two figures here. Then we also need to have the images, what each image and the cell represents in biology. So here we are looking at figure 1 shows the closed stomata. So here we can see that the stomata is closed. Then for figure 2 we have an opened stomata. Now let's look at what cells are surrounding the stomata. So the stomata, the size of the stomata is controlled by the gut cell. So the structure B is the gut cell. Then there are also cells that surrounds the gut cell that are found in the leaves. Then this is what we call subsidiary cells. So our A is subsidiary cells, and these are found in the epidermis. Then this structure we can see that this is a stoma singular, the stomata plural. D, we can see that D is the cytoplasm. Then our C will have chloroplast. Now let's look at the first questions. So question A, Roman number 1, identify the cells A and B. So A is subsidiary. Then our B will have gut cells. Then we have question 2, identify the parts labeled C and D. C is chloroplast, D is cytoplasm. Then we have B1, which figure shows a closed stomata. So the closed stomata will have figure 1.1. Then Roman number 2, explain how the opening of the stomata is brought about. So whenever we look at the stomata, these are opens that are found on the lower part of, mostly found on the lower part of leaves, and their main function is where the exit of water vapor and the gases, in fact even the entry of other gases like carbon dioxide occurs. Now we are looking at how does this stomata, in terms of opening, how is it brought about. So the answer here is, we say stomato pores opens can be opened when gut cells enlarges as a result of absorbing water. Or we can say by target pressure. So these, whenever the gut cell enlarges, if they become large in size by absorbing water, then the stomata will close. So that is the picture and the opening of the stomata. So now let's move on to question 2. Figure 2.1 shows a section through a human tooth. So we have structures like this. F is the enamel, and enamel is the hardest part of a tooth. Then we have our G, the structure after enamel. We have the dentine. So we have the dentine. The dentine form the major part of the tooth. It is harder than the bone. Then we also have now our H. Our H, this is the pulp cavity. So pulp cavity is where we have the blood vessels that brings nutrients and also that takes away the waste products. Then also the nerve cells that transmits the pain signals. Then our eye, the eye is the gum. So it's the gum with the inside we are going to have also the cement. Now let's look at the questions. Question A, Roman 1, state the names of the part labeled F and G. So our F, we said, is enamel. Then our G, dentine. Okay, so let's go to B, A Roman number 2. Explain the function of the part labeled H and I. So what's our H? H, we say D, pulp cavity. So what is the function of pulp cavity? So say the pulp cavity is the space inside the tooth. It contains blood vessels which brings nutrients and take away waste products from the tooth. So that is what is found in this pulp cavity. So it's a space. Then the other thing, the other also function of this, it also contains the nerve cell that transmits the pain signals to the brain when there is a hole in the tooth. Now let's look at eye. What's our eye? So eye, we said it's a gum which contains the cement. So here, the function of the cement, it anchors this, the function of the gum, it anchors the cement. It anchors, to anchor, we are looking at it to making the tooth strong so that it prevents it from falling out. So say it anchors. And we have B, Roman number 1, explain how tooth decay is brought about. So the tooth decay is brought about when the remains of food values in our mouth remains on the teeth. Then later on they will form what we call a plaque. Then the plaque will dissolve the teeth. Then from there we have this condition. So we say the remains of sugars on teeth will develop into an acid called plague, which dissolves the tooth, which dissolve the enamel. Then he suggests 2 ways of preventing tooth decay by brushing regularly. So say by brushing at least twice a day. Then the second one, by reducing on intake of food containing sugar. So these are the best ways in which we can reduce tooth decay. Then we can move on to question 3. Figure 3.1 shows a cassava plant with root tubers. So we can see that we have the root tubers. This is where the food values are stored. Then we have the leaves where photosynthesis occurs. So the leaves are for manufacturing of starch. Then the root tubers are mainly the storage form is where these glucose are being kept. Now let's look at question A1. Which common food nutrient is stored in the root tubers? So we have starch here. State where this food in the root tubers was manufactured. So we know that it's the leaves. Then explain how this food manufactured in A1, A2 above found itself in storage form in the root tuber. So here we want to look at is explain how this food manufactured above found itself in storage form in the root tubers. So we know that when the photosynthesis is taking place, that process manufactures the glucose. Then before glucose is transported to other parts of the plant, it has to be converted into starch. Why? Because glucose is very reactive. It may interfere with other metabolic processes. So say before transportation, glucose must be converted into starch, also cellulose. So this is because glucose is very reactive. Then after this food has been converted into cellulose or starch, where it is in a less reactive form, then the transportation, this food will move by transportation, the process of what we call translocation. So say this food will move from the leaves to the root tubers through translocation. So this is what we can say, but there is a lot that we have to know about this. Then we go to B1. State the nutrient in the soil which is necessary for photosynthesis. Now, for photosynthesis to take place, we have 4 requirements that must be there. The first one, we have the sunlight, which is coming from the sun. Then the second one, we have the carbon dioxide, which comes from the atmosphere. Then we have the chlorophyll, which traps the sunlight. Then we have water. So among these, water is the nutrient that comes from the soil. Then it suggests how this nutrient is taken up from the soil to the leaves in the plant in figure 3.1. So this is like we are trying to describe or explain the movement of water from the soil up to the leaves. So the first one, we know that water moves from the soil into the roots by osmosis. So then the water molecules will move from the roots to the leaves through xylem vessel. And apart from this, we can also indicate the processes or other factors that helps the water to move against the gradient, which I mean against the gravity. So factors we have like transpiration pull, we have like adhesive and cohesive forces. So all these factors and even gradation, all these factors helps water to move against the gravity. Then we will have question 4. Figure 4.1 shows a food web in a given ecosystem. So here we have cabbage. So cabbage is a plant. So the first one under a food web or a food chain, we need to have a producer. So the producers are always the green plants. Then grasshopper. Grasshopper is a primary consumer. Rabbit, primary consumer. A bird, we have a secondary consumer. Human being, secondary consumer. Lion can also be a secondary consumer. Vulture can be a tertiary consumer. So let's look at A, Roman number 1, identify any primary consumer. So we have grasshopper. So we have grasshopper and rabbit. Then construct a food chain using 3 organisms from figure 4.1. So the first one is the producer. So the producer is cabbage. Then since we can use any of the 3, followed by we have let's say, okay, let's just get grasshopper. Then we have the bird. Okay, so now using the food chain in A1, A2, construct a pyramid of energy. So a pyramid of energy is a pyramid that shows the energy from the first trophic level to the next up to the third. So we are going to have 3 trophic levels. So the first and the lower trophic level is always larger in terms of the size. Then we have this one. Okay, so then we have this one here. So the first one has the producer, which is cabbage. So say here we have about, we can just say, since we are not given numbers, we can make any number. So we have about 1,000 kilojoules of energy. Then from there, we can see that we have grasshopper. We'll say with about 10 kilojoules. Then we have the bird with about 1 kilojoule. So as you can see, as we are moving from the bottom to the upper, the energy is reducing. Then let's look at question B. Distinguish between a food chain and a food web. So a food chain shows the flow of energy, shows the flow of energy in one direction. So under a food chain, there is only one direction. But if you look at a food web, it just shows the interlinks, or it consists of, if you have different food chain, forms what we call a food web. So say, whereas a food web shows interlinks of food chains. And here we can go to question C. Explain why organisms at the end of a food chain have the least amount of energy. So we'll say, as energy moves from one trophic level to the next, so 90% of energy is lost. 90% of energy is lost through the processes of respiration. So during the respiration, a certain amount of energy is lost. We have like for locomotion in like animals, during locomotion, energy is also lost. Reproduction, also energy is lost. So the key point here is, as energy is moving from one trophic level to the next, a certain amount of which 90% of energy is lost. So only 10% is passed on to the next trophic level. So that's why if the producers have 10, let's just say 100% of energy, then the primary consumer will have 10% of it. Then from this primary to the secondary, only 10% of it, so we are going to have 1%. So this is the reason why there is a reduction in energy. So 90% of it is lost. Then question 5, pure breeding dwarf garden pea plants were crossed with pure breeding tall garden pea plants. The resulting offsprings were all tall. Then question A1, what is meant by pure breeding? So pure breeding, we are looking at where we have, in terms of the alleles, we are going to have the same letters. If they are capital letters, same capital letters. Then if they are small letters, like that. But in terms of the definition, this can be defined as a group of identical individuals. So say a group of identical individuals that belong, so that not belong, let's say, okay, that always produces offspring of the same phenotype. When intercrossed. So it can be defined like this. Then Roman number 2, using your own symbols, state the genotypes of the parents. So pure breeding dwarf, using our only, so let's use it T. So since we are looking we are using for height here, so let's starting offspring, we are auto, so let's use it T. Now since if this is a pure breeding dwarf, so we are looking at T short, so we are going to have small letter T. Since it's pure, you need to make sure that you use the same kind of letters. Then pure breeding tall garden, here we are going to have capital letter T, another capital letter T. Why are we saying why are we giving capital letter T? Because this indicates that the capital letter T is dominant over the small letter T. How did you know that this is dominant? Because the offspring were all tall. So the height, this means that the small letters did not express themselves in the offspring. Then using a genetic diagram, show the cross between a dwarf plant and one of the offspring. Okay, so first, before we go to this one, let's look at so the first one, it was like this. So we know that if we cross, the offspring will be like this, so will be heterozygous. So at least we have an idea of the genotype for an offspring. So using a genetic diagram, show the cross between a dwarf parent and one of the offspring. So say offspring. So we know that the offspring will have a capital letter and small letter. Then we'll have a dwarf parent, where we are going to have or small letter T. Then here we'll say genotype of first parental generation. Then from there we can separate this. Then there will be called gametes of first parental generation. Of this TT, also this one TT, TT. So these are genotypes of F1. Then differentiate between homozygous and heterozygous. So under homozygous is same as the pure. So a homozygous has the same alleles. So we can say e.g. TT is homozygous, TT capital letter T is homozygous, whereas heterozygous has a dominant allele and a recessive allele. E.g. if we have this capital letter C and the small letter T. So this is what we can say about this, and that's what I wanted to share with you about this paper. We just wanted to look at section A. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.